Hello, wrestling fans, and welcome to Wrestler Weekly Presents. I'm your host, Scottie Richardson. We are back for episode 2 of season 3, and man, I have been waiting to do this episode for a long time, and it's now here. You know, I got my Van Halen on and got this album. You know, this album came out February 10th on a Friday, 1978. But you know what happened 16 days before this album came out? It's an event that, as you remember, last episode when we had Bill Apter on, we talked about it. And I showed you the mag, and the cover of the mag said the most historic event in wrestling history, or something to that effect. But it is the Super Bowl of wrestling, my favorite event, and it pitted belt for belt the world's heavyweight titles. The WWWF superstar Billy Graham is the champion, and the NWA world's heavyweight champion with the 10 pounds of gold, Harley Race. So I'm going to take you through that journey. As you know, if you keep up with Wrestler Weekly on Twitter at Wrestler Weekly, or on Facebook, Instagram, or follow us here on YouTube, you know that I am writing a book. And I'm going to give you some behind the scenes information about that book, about the Super Bowl of wrestling, which I had a good friend of mine, a lawyer, who told me, Scottie, you cannot use Super Bowl of wrestling in the title, unfortunately. Why? Because the NFL owns the rights to the name Super Bowl. But back in 1978, Pro Wrestling Illustrated was not quite on the scene yet. But Inside Wrestling, The Wrestler, Sports Review Wrestling, all of those talked about and previewed an upcoming bout and battle for the Super Bowl of wrestling. So a lot to go through today, and I'm going to fly solo on this one. Shout out to my good buddy Bill on Facebook. You know who you are. Shout out, my friend. And so this is for you. And also my good buddy Bobby Norton, who loves the old school wrestling, but also loves the old classic rock. And so this one goes out, this episode goes out to you too, my friend. And so without further ado, let's talk about how we get started in this. Now, I've got some goodies for you that I'm going to kind of go through today, but wow, I mean, where do you begin? I tell you, there's an old friend of mine, Jerry Prater. Jerry is a guy that was the editor and publisher of, if you remember, in Florida, we had the programs, which were the Grapevine. And so, as I'm going through my stuff here, but these are some NWA wrestling programs. And so this is one that Jerry, who was the editor and publisher, this one was Miami Beach, this program, Miami Beach, and it was Wednesday night, and we're going to talk about that. I've actually got, and I'm going to play a snippet, just a snippet for you, on my phone. I said I didn't have any guests and I was going to fly solo, but I started this journey. I know I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm so excited about this episode. But I started a journey with this discovery in 2011. Now, this event was going to be taking place January 25th. I know I screwed up last episode, and I know you've believe me, I've gotten quite a few messages about it. Hey, you're writing a book and you can't even get the date right? Some great people out there that really love Wrestler Weekly, but January 25th, 1978. And this album, by the way, Van Halen's first album, came out February 10th, 1978. But January 25th, 1978 in Miami in the Orange Bowl. And so this is where this event is going to take place. But before we begin that, in 2011, I was writing my journey to discovering this event. And so I had written probably 6 chapters maybe, and just talked about how Reggie and I, let me see if I can get one out here for you. But Reggie and I would go through the magazines and, go through the back issues. So we stumble upon this mag. And so we're like, wow, look at this mag. I mean, you've got Harley Race with the NWA World's title and Superstar Billy Graham. And, back then, we're looking at these magazines for, as Bill Apter said, make sure that I let the millennials know, magazines. But we're looking at these back issues and we see this episode, this magazine. My wife and son are about to come in, so we'll invite them in to the episode. But so we come across this magazine, and it was one of those things that we really were like, man, did this match actually take place? And so as we're going through it, I'm writing that book. And so when I was finished with, not really all of the book, but most of the book, and so I had given it to my editor that edited Family Bacon Wrestling. And at the time he said, you know what, you need to split this up. This is actually 2 books instead of 1. And so he said, take all of the stuff of your journey and you finding this match and this event and cut it in half and put that out as like a memoir. Then when you start writing about wrestling events like this one, then people are going to like you and your writing, and then they're going to go back and want to learn more about you. And so you'll already have that memoir out there. So that's what Family Bacon Wrestling is. That is about my journey. And then I put it into today's, kind of follow the journey all the way through into present time. But this event was so historic. And you see right here, it says the most important match of our time, the most important match of our time. And so now it is time to finish this book. But I wanted to get this episode kind of in the can, if you will. And so as I went back and looked at some of my research, Miami Beach Convention Hall is where in Miami they ran Wednesday nights. And so one of the things that you're going to hear on this episode, which I have recorded for you, is an interview that I did with Harley Race in 2011. It was about a 22-minute interview, and I'm just going to play a snippet for you. The audio may be a little difficult coming off my phone, but we're going to try to get that to you. And so let's fast forward to some of the stuff that I have for you that I'm going to show you tonight. First thing, Jerry Prater, who I said earlier, he was the editor and publisher. So this is a program that came out Wednesday night, July 13th of 1977. Okay, so this is the first. So this program comes out. Let me just give you the card. Dusty Rhodes against Ernie Ladd in a Florida heavyweight title rematch. Ivan Koloff versus Rocky Johnson. Buddy Wolf versus Steve Kern. Buddy Roberts took on Tony Rocco, Tank Patton, Charlie Cook. But the first match of this night, by the way, was Mike McCord, as you know, Iron Mike. That's Austin Idol. And he took on Wolfman Smith. But this is July 13th, 1977. But I want you to see what's on the cover. Right here in the top, it says Superstar versus Race. So this is our first indication that this match potentially is going to happen. Now remember, you've got Vince Sr. in the WWWF in controlling the New York area, if you will, the upper Northeast area, even down to Philadelphia, which you know. But Eddie Graham was the promoter in the Florida territory. And so you could just imagine Vince Sr. and Eddie Graham really coming together and hatching this idea, this plan, and seeing it come to fruition. And here it is, July 13th, 1977, in a Florida program. I'm going to show you the inside of this. By the way, there's a young Mike McCord right there, taking on Ivan Call. But look at this, Race versus Superstar. It could happen here. Gives me chills thinking about it. Here we are, July 13th, 1977. And it's our first indication that something big is going to happen, potentially, with this event. So then we see this one comes along. This is the Wrestling Super. I'm going to take this one down because I want to come back to that one. But this one is December of 77. Okay? December of 77. Wrestling Superstars magazine, and on the cover it says Graham versus Race exclusive preview of the Super Bowl of Champions. Now this one is signed by Harley Race and Superstar Billy Graham. You can see that they're both pointing at each other. And I talked to a good buddy of mine on Facebook who actually took this photo and sent it in, but it's also signed by Bruno Sammartino. I did not want to leave that out. But this one has Graham versus Race, exclusive preview of the Super Bowl of Champions. Here's the inside. Harley Race, how I'd beat Superstar Graham. Superstar Graham, how I'd beat Harley Race. Really fascinating articles throughout that mag. But this is what I liked about it. It was almost like a boxing, like, you know, the preview of boxing, how you would create the match and be able to really hype it for months. Remember, seed was planted in July. It's now December. This mag comes out, so now it's hit the national. This was a program in Florida. Now it's hit the national news, if you will. And it even talks about the common opponents of the two. And here we've got Billy Robinson. We've got Bruno Sammartino. And we've got Gene Kiniski, I believe. Yes, Gene Kiniski. So Kiniski, Sammartino, and Billy Robinson. So we're hyping it. We're getting it hyped up. We're going through the common opponents and we're talking about it. Now, let me just sidebar for a second. There are fans out there who are watching this episode saying, Scotty, why are you getting so hyped up on this? It's kayfabe. This is all pre-planned. You know what I say to that? I say the same thing that I say when I get in my car, I put my windows down, and I turn the music up. The same feeling that I get hearing Ain't Talking About Love for the 1,000th time is the same feeling I get when I pull out the magazine and read an article as if it is real. Because you know what? It's still real to us, right? And so here's the hype machine. Here's the cover. That's December of 77. Now, let's see where we go. This one is January 3rd of 1978. We're back in Florida. Jerry Prater, he's put out a program. This event is happening in Tampa at the Fort Hesterly Armory on a Tuesday night, January 3rd, 1978. The main event this night was Florida heavyweight title match between Lars Anderson and Dusty Rhodes. Also on this card was Don Morocco and Killer Carl Cox. Florida tag title match was Ivan Koloff and Mr. Saito versus Rocky Johnson and Pedro Morales. So some good matches on this card, but you can see what's on here, and it's got Super Bowl of Wrestling has been signed. Let me move this. This is my, tells me I got a ticket stub in there, but Super Bowl of Wrestling signed. And so now we're really starting to get it fired up. These fans in Florida, and look, you open up the program, and there is the two champions. Super Bowl has been signed. Jerry writes a fantastic article, and this is an NWA Wrestling, but here you can see the grapevine was inside was an article, was a kind of a column, and it ended up becoming the program. But Jerry writes a fantastic article on this potential event that's now signed. He says the Orange Bowl Stadium in Miami will be the scene of the biggest event in the history of professional wrestling on Wednesday night, January 25th, when the NWA Heavyweight Wrestling Champion will meet the WWWF Heavyweight Wrestling Champion. It will be title versus title. The idea being that this contest will settle traditional disputes as to which of these two internationally recognized sanctioning bodies has the better man wearing its championship belt. So just, and the article goes on, but here is the inside of it. And I may post that article. I'll do that. I'll post the article so you can read it. But that is the match has been signed. And then we get to the match itself. And obviously it took place January 25th, 1978. But it wasn't until May. Now remember, no internet back then. We're talking 1978. No internet unless you were at the event and you went home and you did your rotary phone and you called somebody. That's the only way that you were going to find out, unless you were reading some newspaper, if you were getting newspapers shipped in different places across the country. But when the magazines hit it, we're talking May of 1978 before the magazines put the story out. So a couple things before we get to that. I've got some really cool memorabilia that I want to show you. Here is the actual program from the event. And so this one is made out to Reggie and myself, Superstar Billy Graham and Harley Race, both signed. This is the actual program, and there's the card, Miami Orange Bowl. Now remember, it was WWWF champion versus NWA world champion, but it was also wrestlers from the two territories, the two organizations going at it. For instance, the match just under this one, think about this match, Ken Patera versus Dusty Rhodes. U.S. Tag Team title match, the Valiant Brothers versus Mike Graham and Steve Kern. Southern Heavyweight title match, Pedro Morales versus Lars Anderson. Florida Tag Team title, Ivan Koloff and Mr. Saito against the Briscoe brothers. Rocky Johnson versus Killer Carl Cox. Ivan Putski against Ox Baker. I mean, this was loaded. Bobby Duncombe is on here. Chavo Guerrero's on here. Black Angus. I mean, this card was loaded. Here's a Repop poster. This is a Repop poster that I picked up at one of the NWA Fan Fest events. Put that in a frame if we get some autographs on it, but I thought it was cool just to pick it up. But these are some of the original items. Matter of fact, here is the original, you can see this is the original ticket stub from the event. And if you can see here, it is, there you go, it's perforated there, so it's ripped off. But this is the original Super Bowl of Wrestling ticket stub. And then some really cool things. This was some newspaper clippings. This is right out of the newspaper where it showed the whole event. And then we got some other things. This was after the event. And as you know, in this event, rain puts a damper on wrestlers' dreams of biggest payday ever. Having this at the Orange Bowl was a bleep idea. I was afraid it was going to rain. And that was a quote that's featured. I'm trying to see real quick if that was Billy Graham or Harley Race. It's probably on the back of the article, but this is there's some of the rain and some of the issues that happened. And I've talked to Bill Apter last week about it briefly, talked to George Napolitano about it privately, and I've met a lot of people. Pete Letterberg he has all of the original photos that led up to this event with Gordon Soley. He's got some things that were in the dressing room before and after, and also ringside. So Pete has been gracious enough to help me along this journey with this with research on the book. Here's another article: wrestling fans in Orange Bowl are killers' toughest opponents. Marie Young is one of wrestling's faithful. About 12,000 showed up at the Orange Bowl Wednesday night. And this is a big battle royal that took place that night. Also, let's see if there's anything else. This is the original insert. This is the original insert of the program. You can see it's kind of weathered. But the fact that this program still exists, knowing how bad of a night it rained that night, is just really amazing. That I've been able to obtain a copy of it, but then also have the guys in the event, the champions, to sign it. Now, again, May of '78 is when the two mags, and actually three, but I'm going to spotlight these two here in just a second. But before I do, I want to let you hear a snippet of Harley Race talking about this event, and I'll see if you can hear this.
Yeah, that night it was raining in the Orange Bowl, and there was still 12,000 fans that attended. And this actually was on a Wednesday night. And again, I've often wondered, with it being raining and your match with Billy being the main event, I've often wondered it could have been 20,000 fans there versus just 12. I think we would have probably filled the place up if it hadn't been for, just different things coming into the week of the event. And by being in the middle of the week versus weekend, Miami used to always run on a Wednesday night, so that wasn't really all that odd for it, but had it been a weekend, it would have been a hell of a lot better. Right.
Now, I'm not sure if you could pick that up, but Harley's talking about how this event, now this was way before WrestleManias, this was way before Starrcade 83 even. This was 1978, in January of 1978. This was a week after the actual football Super Bowl. And so it was one of those events that, great idea, and just the rain just caused havoc. The match was best 2 out of 3. And as you know, it ended in a time limit draw at the end. But Harley's talking about, had this been on a weekend and great weather, would have sold out the Orange Bowl. Now think about that. Put that in perspective. Knowing what we know now with Starrcade 83 and Greensboro, and then also all the WrestleManias, here you've got these two icons and legends and champions in the Orange Bowl in Miami, and just unbelievable. Now, this is the mag that came out May of '78, and it was just a brief. This was Sports Review, so it's just a 2-pager, a one small article, and it talks about the most important wrestling match of the last 2 decades. Saw WWWF champ Superstar Billy Graham battle NWA King Harley Race for the championship of both divisions. Here is an exclusive report on this historic battle. And it says here, finally, as if time itself could stand no more, the buzzer sounded, the time limit was up, the war had gone on for 60 minutes. This was enough. So the first meeting of a WWWF champ and an NWA title holder in this generation came to an end. The match was a draw. Each man retained his title. This was the first. It will not be the last. And as you know, on February 20th, Bob Backlund defeated Superstar Billy Graham. And in the contract, right, of this match, there was a rematch. And unfortunately, Billy Graham had lost his title. So the rematch did happen, but it was now Harley Race versus Bob Backlund. And so that took place. And I want to see, so I came across this, I think it's in this one. I'll put this one up for you to see. But this is the actual match. This is the photo that Bill Apter talked about last week that he took. And what an unbelievable shot. When you're talking about spotlighting this match, could not get any better than this photo, signed, personalized, which I appreciated, by both of these champions. And there was the Putski Ox Baker match that we talked about. And then, so if you open this one, the guy we used to read quite a bit was Matt Brock. If you remember Matt Brock's Plain Speaking, he talks about, this is what he said at the bottom, and here's the photo. But he said, I've saved the Super Bowl of Wrestling for last because I'm not sure what to think of it. It was a superb battle, even if Harley Race is still NWA champ, and Superstar Billy Graham retains the WWWF crown. But there's an ache in my gut because there isn't one champ overall. There should have been a winner. God, there should have been one unquestioned champion. I wanted to see at least that much in my lifetime. And so here is the mag, and obviously I'm going to go into much more detail, and I have had great interviews along this journey. And in fall of '78, this photo came out. There's no article about the Super Bowl of Wrestling, but just to keep selling mags, this was fall of '78, Superstar Billy Graham. This was in the match that took place, and there is Harley and signed by both guys. But I know we kind of sped through a lot of that, and there's more of Harley's interview that we'll release at a later date. But I hope you have enjoyed this kind of walk through an event that is real special to me. And my brother has interviewed Superstar Billy Graham, so we'll try to get that information out as well. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of shoot interviews. Just be careful. Be careful on the shoot interviews. I'm not a big fan of them, as you know. And so I like to have, private talks. Sometimes you put a camera in front of people and look out. So I know there's stuff out there, but I like to go back and read. Jerry Prater, his stuff was eyewitness accounts, firsthand knowledge. And George, if you remember last season, George talked about he actually drove Superstar Billy Graham to the event. He drove him to Miami. So just a wealth of things that are coming. Hopefully you can pick that book up. Hopefully early next year that will be going out. So again, thanks for supporting Wrestler Weekly. If you want to find us across all of our social media, you can find us at Twitter, at Wrestler Weekly, as well as Facebook and Instagram. Pick up t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com and pick up a copy of my book. It's a great read for this summer, Family Bacon Wrestling. Until next time, fans, so long for now.